Okay, hello and welcome to the August 2018 Herbal Forecast for Liminal Light. I am joined, as per usual, by Bonnie Kavanaugh.
Hello.
And Suzanne Bell Stone.
Hello.
Who's with us in person today rather than over the phone, which is exciting.
We're outside.
Yeah, we're recording outside, so you'll probably hear some
Cars.
Yeah, I was going to say some birds and beavers and crickets. Yeah.
Woodchuck.
Yeah, there's a kind of outlaw woodchuck around these parts. Okay, so we usually just go through kind of in order of the herbal forecast that Suzanne lays out, and I like that you started right off the bat with kind of the grand trine that perfects. It never actually totally perfects, but gets kind of as close as it's going to be before Saturn starts stationing for retrograde, and it starts separating before it ever becomes complete on August 25th. But it's certainly, because things are moving so slowly, kind of applying over the course of the month, at least the Saturn and Uranus part of it, and then the Sun kind of steps in there by the 25th once the Sun moves into Virgo. But it's a good thing to keep in mind right from the start, because it's definitely something that we're recording this today on the 6th. I've definitely already noticed it on Saturday, especially on Saturn's day. You could feel that Uranus and Taurus destabilization of organic pace and rhythm. Like whatever is your this is my natural pace. It really came down as like a disruption of schedule, like a major disruption of schedule.
Yeah, we both worked that day, which we normally don't.
Yeah, we both got called in to bartend at a place that we bartend at, and then I've already noticed my normal kind of magical routine has been really displaced on Saturdays, as that Uranus-Saturn trine has been setting up. But it definitely got really acute. It's the first day that I didn't do it at all, and then we got into the alcohol a little harder than we probably should have, and then it was just like that classic Uranus lightning bolt kind of disruption. Just that the Taurus kind of nice natural organic natural conveyor belt was really just thrown off,
like made with bark and leaves smashed together.
Little woodchucks running underneath.
Totally.
Yeah, the one that you ride through the forest where you're just chilling on your hike. But I noticed how serious it was, and so it's like, yeah, that's really great. We got to pay attention to that right away, because that's going to keep coming back and coming back. So you recommended Solomon Seal, Boneset, and Mullein. Do you want to say some things about those choices?
I think they're really wonderful Saturn herbs. They also have other rulerships, but they just have this structure, this kind of flexible structure to all three of them that allows one's body that feels out of whack, possibly from a shaken earth, from a Uranus and Taurus, to come back into a solid foundation, to find that again. So I feel like, all three of them, they don't all have to be called upon, but choosing one would be a really good idea for this month.
Yeah, I didn't think about it that way, as choosing one when I just looked at the notes, but that makes a lot of sense. And then I was noticing as we go along, and then we get to the end, and then you see on the 25th, the trine is oh yeah, now here it is. This is the grand trine now, and that kind of leads us off at the end of the month. But at that point, things are moving so slowly because of Mars's station and Saturn getting ready for station, and Uranus just moves slow, and Mercury's coming back from retrograde, etc. Things are moving so slow that there's less perfecting configurations towards the end of the month. So there seems to be less happening astrologically. So by then, it seemed like whatever allies you had been really working for you by midway through can just kind of continue to be your main allies throughout, So it does make sense to kind of get on board with, one or the other in the beginning and kind of go with them. So we should maybe go through them a little bit one at a time. So bone set.
So bone set, one of our Northwest natives, amazing ability to set bones, even though some of the literature will say that it doesn't. You really need to look to the folk literature because that's the people actually practicing it. And they are telling that it does it, but it also helps with aching bones during fevers. So it's really the way that bone set, if you've seen the leaf, it clasps around the stem, and that really is telling of the way that it is able to clasp around and reset the bones in that manner. So yeah, it's also just like, it's a really, has a lot of strength to the plant itself. If you look at the plant, it has a strong structure to it. It's coming out with these exceedingly white, bleached white flowers about this time of year that are telling of bones.
Interesting, like the white of bleached bones.
Yeah, there's one growing at the pond that we love to frequent. And when we had seen Steve Byer talk about bone set, or he did the TikTok and he was talking about bone set for that. He was talking about those leaves, and I couldn't really picture it. And then seeing the plant with its beautiful white flowers and those really distinct leaves, just was very magical.
Yeah,
that was growing there, and then there was also just St. John's wort, just like growing like right on the very peaceful, shady shores of this magical pond.
But it is funny because that's where we take the dog to go swim, and we throw sticks for her. And she takes the sticks and she grabs them and she brings them into her little like fantasy like Neolithic like bone lair, like where it's like she like takes her like mammoth bone and goes into her cave with it.
And it's also like the place that we're most likely to get ticks.
Yeah, totally.
Because we're just walking through grasses and
or in that spot, you want to retrieve the stick for the dog, but like you're like, oh, if I like get down and get in that nasty zone, that's like going to be the tick spot. But I also. That's when we noticed it. We were like, look at her. She's just having her, like, fantasy where she's just, like, chewing a, like, saber-toothed tiger leg. And then Bonnie was like, oh, and this is bone set. We're like, oh, yeah, there it is. But yeah, bone set's interesting that, like you said, in the folk literature, it was said by First Nations people to guide the bones. And that, like, comfrey does... comfrey they call knit bone, and the comfrey works on the surface of, like, say, your arm, whereas bone set works, like, deeper in. And I like that it doesn't necessarily do the healing, but it, like, guides the bones together. I mean, it does do the healing, but, like, what it's doing is, like, making the bones, like, tectonic plates, like, migrate towards each other in the right way.
Yeah. All three of these herbs have that plant intelligence that is, people say, to guide bones. I always think of comfrey as just having an exuberance for life. If you cut it down, it's just going to immediately come back up again. It has that exuberance for healing too, so that if you're healing a wound, an open wound, it will heal on the surface, like you're saying, but underneath it might not be healed. And so it doesn't. It's so exuberant. It's almost like a dog that's so excited, but it's maybe not focused in on some surgical plan. Yeah,
it's so rich and dark, and I always thought it looked like skin. It looks like some sort of like dino kale or something, right? Like dinosaur skin. One of the things I thought that was interesting about bone set is it's one of the few or like small list of things that actually totally was here, not European, was like part of the First Nations like folk culture that that eventually sort of collapsed with European contact largely. Like there's very few people, especially in the Northeast, that retained that connection to original native herbal wisdom, and a lot of this, and like the Europeans brought culpeper with them, and that European book herbalism infiltrated like the native traditions, like where a lot of what we think of now as like native plant knowledge was actually like some of it is informed by like colonist like herbalism, you know, which is, but boneset harkens back further to that. And
Yeah, when colonists first came over, they called upon, they learned about boneset from the First Nations
Right.
tribes, and then no one would be without a drying boneset in their barn, or like everyone called upon boneset in the winter because it was the influenza, the flu, the intermittent fever remedy.
yeah, from breaking fevers.
Yeah.
There's like a lot of like heavy sweating.
Right. But yeah, that now that plants have become replaced by synthesized chemicals
Yeah.
in laboratories, yeah, boneset is now a folk again.
And boneset's also, I know we went to a TikTok with Steve Byer, and he was talking about how it's like more of like a temporary dosage, like 1 to 2 weeks.
That might just be a safety thing. I don't know.
Yeah.
Would you suggest the same?
Yeah, it's not as people might call a tonic that you might use for an extended period of time. It's more, it's definitely, you're calling upon boneset, and it's such a bitter. Actually, people who need it will love the taste for a certain period of time, and then when their body stops needing anymore, they'll finally taste the too bitter,
Oh,
and
wow.
they'll be like, "Oh no, I can't have this anymore."
Oh, cool.
So it's definitely a short term.
Yeah, like we were saying with like mushrooms, like before we started recording, we were talking about a couple of years ago, we had like a major bluet season in the woods behind our house. And we were eating like bluet pizza, bluet gravy, like every night, you know, and then...
and then we just couldn't anymore.
Yeah, totally.
It just became obvious that we shouldn't
Right.
do it.
Yeah, the stomach just turned. It was like, that's it.
Yeah, it's
you
like
know?
that.
You gave me the boneset tincture, and I've been taking that, and I'm done taking it now. I kind of just forgot to take them, you know, and it's been fine.
Way.
And it's because I found a deer tick on me, and I think that seems like I'm in the clear. So
Yeah, excellent.
But that's why Steve Byer suggested it as in the TikTok, is that it was saying it was like a real like super jump start to the immune system, and I guess
which would make sense for like breaking a fever.
Yeah, and why you can't do it for long if it's like the jumper cables, you know?
Right. He was saying, well,
he said it gets the blood moving. He also said it's best taken warm or hot. And for people that are looking for it, it's found in swamps. It's in the aster family, which is interesting. And it's probably in bloom now, right?
Mine is just about to open its blossoms.
And if anyone knows what reed canary grass is, it grows alongside reed canary grass.
Wet.
Yeah, and wet,
Yeah, you find on
wet swamp
streams.
areas. Yeah.
Yes, that's what he was saying.
Okay, so Solomon seal then.
Solomon seal. Another amazing plant, also some people call Hydron the conqueror root. Of course, it's really a rhizome. But it has a doctrine of signatures, which is a telling, the plant kind of showing. The root looks like it's many jointed, and it looks like knuckles, joints, vertebrae, and it just tells about how it aids the musculoskeletal system. People call it a tropho-restorative, meaning it will guide you personally what you need with your musculoskeletal system. If you're needing more tension or if you're needing to loosen, it will guide in whatever direction is needed. The roots are very moist, the rhizomes are very moist, and that telling of the lubrication that it offers, and they're edible. So it also has that plant intelligence to reset bone. It also has the ability to dissolve calcified bone when it's calcifying in places it doesn't need to be calcifying. It's great for old wounds, for new injuries, and therefore will help on the non-material level with structure, foundation, dissolving things you don't need, helping things to build that are important for you.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. I've been like, because we were going to mention it last month in the forecast because you had mentioned it,
Yeah.
but then we didn't get to it. And so I started thinking about it and started thinking about how it's just called Solomon seal, and it's possible, like, how related is it to the Solomonic tradition? Is it just kind of like, as like everything got called, like the grimoires and a lot of the Solomonic books just would every once in a while just get called just Aristotle, or like they would be just called Agrippa, or just called like that's how we get like the Petit Albert, or like the Grand Albert, like the books of Albertus Magnus. They would just get like kind of like labeled like there would be these time periods and where just like magic books were just called this, and in the same
Right.
sense, anything that looked like, oh, that kind of looks like a magic seal, that was basically a synonym to like, oh, that just is like a Solomon seal, like Solomon equals sign magic, like, and but so it was like, were they actually a part of the Solomonic tradition ever? And so I started like pondering that and kind of worked my way backwards from like, well, some people do call it John the Conqueror root, but the thing that's most commonly called John the Conqueror root is Ipomia jalapa, where you get like jalap, like powder and stuff like that. And that's probably just regional,
Yeah, that is regional.
Like, it's like, what's John the Conqueror root here is
Right.
like, because also like in areas, chewing John was galangal, and in low John was trillium root often, or sometimes even high John the Conqueror root was St. John's wort in some places.
Amazing.
But the one that we like most know, the one that's like most common around different areas is that jalapa, and that's in the morning glory family.
Right.
So you can kind of see, like looking at morning glory and then looking at Solomon seal. It's like this tiny morning glory, like kind of like thread of little flowers, because it's, what is it, like the Polygonatum multiforum is the name of Solomon seal, and multiforum means many flowered.
Right.
But it's interesting because I was thinking about how it just clearly sounds like multiform, right? Like multiforum, and that's one of the in the PGM, one of the lists of epithets of Hecate that you get, where some of them are just like beetle, like deer, like herald's wand, like field mouse, but one of them in there is multiform. And there's 28 of them, as the 28 mansions of the moon, or perhaps they were thinking of the 28 lunar days, and that now there's like 74 species of Solomon seal, so it's so close to the 72 of the classic spirit list.
Yeah.
And then but Polygonatum comes from as many need, that's what it means in ancient Greek. And that's from a physical description of the rhizomes, but I thought it was thinking about the those De Clancy illustrations of the 72 spirits. So many of them have like a bunch of legs, that are really like knobby kneed, like goat legs or whatever. And then, and that like they, because it's like the cross section of the cut rhizome looks like arcane seal, so they might have just been called. But even just like the string of flowers looks like the kind of like decorative, kind of like little like the little hooks and crosses in the lesser key of Solomon and the Lemegeton.
And they're very hidden.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
like Solomon seal will come up in this kind of leaning swath almost with the flowers underneath.
Yeah.
It's really like
it's really pretty.
Yeah, it's almost like it's protecting its own energy at the same time. It's
On the Coastal Maine Botanical Gardens Facebook page, it says that it was named after King Solomon of the Old Testament. He bestowed his seal upon this plant because of its great worth and value to his people. So I don't know if that, that's just what this says. But this, the Maine Botanical Gardens has taken a great interest in Solomon's seal because they want to have some sort of certification from the North American a North American plant. I can't. It's like NACCP. They want to be like this sort of place where Solomon's seal is being protected and harvested, or just where they're planting lots of it, and it's a protected species because it is something that they find to be important and beautiful for many reasons.
The amazing thing about harvesting that is that you can replant the crown. You can kind of harvest with your fingers a little bit, and
Deb Sewell said that. Yeah.
And then you just take like the ends of it, and then you replant the crown in like a little kind of knuckle. Well, actually long. I would say maybe like 6 inches long at least. Replant that. Give it some water so that you're not actually killing the plant when you're harvesting the root.
What is it? Oh, here it is. It says NAPCC. It's the North American Plant Collections Consortium, and it says that their goal is to become a repository for the genus and therefore become officially recognized by them. So they're, I don't know, I'm excited. I'm going to be going there in the next couple of weeks. I don't know if it's going to be St. John time, but it'll still be beautiful to see it.
That's awesome. Just like start working for the plant, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I mean, it's like that movie, The Botany of Desire.
Yeah.
You know, St. John is calling you.
Yeah.
You think you're being...
Or Solomon's seal.
Yeah. One of my clients, I had to, I was taking out all this fern so that all the Solomon's seal could just grow only there. And now it's like this amazing swath of Solomon's seal. It's almost like a whispering zone of just like strength. It's a really incredible place.
Yeah.
Surrounded by hemlock trees. It's really incredible. I recommend anyone to grow it.
Yeah.
I'm really, really interested in having some here. I think that I saw false Solomon's seal growing like down the street. But what is the...
I often use that for respiratory woes more, but they're both wonderful plants to grow.
It was really incredible because it sort of reminded me of this predatory bird in this way. This had this real...
The plume?
Just the way that it was perched up on this hill.
Oh, okay.
And it was at the crossroads, this like really incredible crossroads that we have down there, and it was just growing there, and sort of if you weren't really looking focused, you wouldn't see it because it just, of course, would just blend into it, and then it just kind of popped out to me, and then it was just this sort of very magical, extremely powerful plant that I felt a great connection with, but just left it because you can't take a plant if you're not ready to use it.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes I'll take it and lay it on like a working altar where I work with a plant intermediary so it can know that I want it to start teaching me about it, you know? It's just like a good thing to do if you feel like you really want to bring it with you, so it's like you start that relationship, but you don't have to wait to like have your whole tincture ready to go.
Right.
You know, you're like, but you want to start engaging, you know.
Sometimes I'll grow a plant for many years even before I harvest the medicine or work with it. I'm trying to get to know the plant itself.
Definitely. And then also just like wanting to harvest it at the right time, planetarily, that becomes interesting.
Yeah, that's definitely a deal. It's attributed to Saturn, so you're going to want to, I mean, you know, and then plants have multiple attributions, and this will definitely come up like further on in the talk because sometimes they're attributed by Decon even, so it makes sense through their exaltation rather than the rulership, and so you get like it's attributed to the sun, but it's Venus, but it's Leo, but it's because it's on this solstice axis or whatever, you know. And so that gets like a little bit where you can get a little bit more varied, but generally there's going to be Culpeper works really well for like not everything's in there, but you'll see planetary, and then once you get to know what they're talking about and we should probably do a whole show on that eventually, like what is a Saturn plant, what is a Venus plant, you know, but it's attributed to Saturn, and that was one thing that I found interesting too about like, is it related to the Goetic tradition to the Solomonic traditions is it's Mars and Saturn are often the planets of Goetic work. They're red and black, and its fruits are usually red or black berries, and that it's so in the Grimorium Verum, like the elections for work are initially like Tuesdays, so those are going to be Mars or Saturn, like whether it's night or day, like how Mars day, Saturn night. And then just like the fruits of the plant itself, and that it is this like Solomon seal. And it's one of the things that we were talking about before we started recording about like if something already has that folk association behind it, it invokes the thing even if it's not the thing. You know, like if it was ever used in Solomonic traditions or not, now it's Solomon seal.
Exactly.
And so like let's do it. But that one thing I noticed is that it's widespread in Asia and endemic in China, and that in the Grimorium Verum, the sigils for Lucifer, there's one for Lucifer in Europe and one for Lucifer in Asia. And I was just thinking about that like Solomon seal, and they're often confused, so a lot of people can like be calling the Asian Lucifer when they don't like mean to, whatever. But like, but that like, I don't know, it kind of was another hit for like reflecting Solomon seal's activity, and that it's like a yin tonic. It lubricates the heart and the lungs, and builds marrow and increases semen and tones the abdomen, and so I was like, that's a pretty good, like, this grounds you out, gets you ready, even gets like the sexual juices ready, and just thinking about like energy work before magic work, like if you're going to do like a full blast like Solomonic operation, say just like the perfect example of doing like a full on like trying to just like contact your holy guardian angel, like an 18-month like Solomonic operation or something like that, you're going to want to like be in the best shape and have that like that sexual energy harness so that you can use that and apply it. And that this might be like, if it's not already like a part of the tradition, it's just kind of like, oh, those look like magic seals. Like it can actually be like taken and used as like a Solomonic preparatory tonic, like, so I don't know. It's something I was just interested in now. It's kind of just like, well, we might as well just take the name and run with it.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's cheers because Venus has just gone into Libra. Which brings us to that part of the forecast.
Well,
we didn't talk about Mullen.
But
I feel like
Mullen comes back around. I feel
like we've been, yeah,
we'll get to Mullen. It comes back in later. Or no, I mean, maybe we might as well just go through Mullen.
Mullen grows in sandy, dry, gravelly soil, so it really knows how to work with water, knows how to add more water when it's needed, allow fluids to leave the body when it's needed, and it it's a biennial, so it starts as a rosette along the ground, and then it shoots up into this spire, this tall, if you travel the country of North America, you'll see it all across the country, just these beautiful brown spires of mullein, and it has that upward strength, and also has the intelligence to reset bones, to reset discs that are out of place in one's back and the vertebrae of the backs, and with that water and fluidity, it just has that flexibility along with the structure, because we want structure, but we don't want it to be too rigid. We want flexibility along with that, because if the ground is shaking, we need to shake with it. We need to move with it.
I think they show that well in their I was thinking about just in their biennial nature, that they're persistent. That like they go through a hard winter and then they're still there, and then we were looking at them last year. They were really tall. There was one in the yard that Asa was right up there. Asa was
I remember
like,
that one.
yeah, he was like, whoa, that isn't that like the lord of the yard, you know, like it was like the tallest thing by far, and had like it was very proud. And then we were walking in kind of the rock yards down on the ATV trails and seeing all these like very short flowering mullins this year,
Amazing.
you know, that you're like, oh, well, that's this year's, and next year these are all going to be tall, you know.
Yeah. And then there was also some insane candelabra mullins, you know, when they have
Right.
all the offshoots
Yeah.
and they're 8 feet tall.
Yeah.
They were incredible as well. There's
So tough. Like around March, when if the snow melts, you'll see mullein leaves just like there under the snow.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
snow
I love
comes
that.
back again. They're covered, and they'll just come out again.
that downy
Yeah.
leaf. It's like so good for the respiratory system.
Right. It's like doctrine of signatures of the cilia of the lungs. Just like tells us that it's going to help us. But it also, like most plants, are on a spectrum, so that if you are processing a lot of mullein, you need to wear respiratory equipment, you need to wear gloves, or else that cilia is going to be almost like fiberglass and attack you.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, because it heals. It often is like an expectorant, right? As it like because it breaks stuff up in your lungs, so it's
Yeah.
actually like goes in your lungs and scrapes the lungs and helps you pull stuff out. You
Yeah.
know, like it's kind of harsh on your lungs, but it does like that's what's helping it out by getting everything out of there.
Right. It's like our gifts. Like our gifts are also our curses. You know, it just depends on how we use them or
Exactly.
what manner that we're able.
Yeah, I know we were talking before about like that mullein is so dry and it's a Saturn plant, and that down is dry but it's soft, but that that it is that downy cilia. What is it? Silica?
Well, they say it's similar to the cilia
Oh,
of
cilia,
the lungs, the little
That like
hairs in the...
that those hairs are what traps the water. So
Right.
even though it's dry, it can hold the dew and hold these drops of water and collect them.
They say also maybe it's protecting them from the dust in the dusty areas that it grows in, so that it won't cover up and stop photosynthesis. So both.
Wow. So
Amazing.
it is really interesting as its use in torches. And I was looking into like Lunisad and Lamas, which would be called often like Himmelbrand, heavenly fire. And that's what the mullein would be called, as it would when they'd make sacred herb bundles during Lamas or Lunisad, which was also called Lafmas, or bread mass. And was the time of blessing herbs that they were going to use throughout the year, because everything is up then, so that's the time to like cut, and like, you know, August 1st ish, to cut it and start to dry it out. You were like, oh, we have the herbs now, let's get them all hanging in the barn and let's bless them, because that's what we're going to use all year. It was also called Königskurs. You know, this is like horribly pronounced, but it's king's candle. And so it would, in that they would hang that all up, but then they'd make a bundle that was like the blessing bundle, and the big tall mullein, you know, like dipped in wax as the king's candle in the center would be like the centerpiece of the blessing, you know, which is really interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting because Imbolg, like the opposite end of the spectrum, is when we bless tools.
Yeah.
So then it's amazing.
That's funny about the tools, because Culpepper in his in the section about mullein, you know, sometimes I'll just steal like a line from him because it's just so bonkers. We're like, wait, what is he talking about now? But he says, in reference to a decoction of the root in red wine or water for treating an, how do you say that, like an ague?
Yeah, og.
Ague, yeah, for treating an ague. Where, this is Culpepper, wherein red hot steel hath been oft quenched, doth stay the bloody flux. And so like that, referencing like quenching a blade, you know, on the opposite end of the spectrum. So mullein, like probably, you know, he's saying like, as we use mullein as a quench, to like for a blade, it can also stay off like the blood kind of like going all over the place. It can stay the blood, you know. Maybe do you think he's talking about the pulse even?
Yeah, I think also just like if it's just so hot,
Uh,
just allowing the blood to kind of stagnate and kind of stay
Yeah.
there.
yeah,
maybe?
like hot
Is
blood.
that like kind of like soldering, like you know, when you put that like
Branding.
Yeah, like,
Yeah.
but no, like what is it called when you put like heat over like a wound to stop the bleeding?
Oh, yeah. Cauterizing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's an interesting thing. And then Dioscorides is talking about mullein root and wine for lasks and fluxes in the belly. Again, we get like a flux. So mullein is like bringing things down to this like persistent, stable level, and then he also talks about it for, the seeds and the leaves boiled in wine for removing splinters and thorns. And then if you look at his entry, there's a lot of, you're removing things from the lungs. You're removing there's a lot of removal around mullein. Which is
Yeah, like
interesting.
breaking up things in the lungs, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible.
So yeah.
But I mean, I've always thought of it that way, so it's interesting to hear your assessment of mullein for this particular time, and what it could be doing. Also, yeah, relieving the pain of a stubbed or broken finger or toe.
Yeah, I was really focusing on musculoskeletal saturnine qualities of all three of these herbs.
Yeah, so those are great kind of allies of the big three of the month, that to work with this trine, because those are opportunities, like there's a harmony going on, but it's funny, right? Like how we started off saying, like, it's like we personally noticed it just threw our schedule off, it threw our work schedule off, it threw our magical schedule off, and so you can kind of, these are some of the guys that are going to help you and gals work with that.
Yeah.
But then there's the whole month ahead of us. And so we go into August 6th, which is today, and the Sun in Leo squaring Jupiter in Scorpio, and then, of course, Venus entering Libra. Cheers. And then we get into this really interesting combination of cornflower, again boneset, but cornflower and blue vervain, which blue vervain has a ton of lore surrounding it, and cornflower not as much, but some interesting things were coming up. So do you want to talk about, maybe start with cornflower?
Cornflower, just I think of as a really enlivening. I think it's kind of like who you actually want to invite to the party. Who's gonna like almost like be able to go in between all the guests and bring everybody together.
So Libra.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's how I really.
There's incredible history with cornflower, though, too. I was reading on this Oxford, can tell you, it was the Oxford Journal of Experimental Botany, and I read about cornflower being used it was very chic around between 1364 and 1347 BC. The flowers were depicted in all sorts of jewelry, and it was in collars, and also it was seen as a symbol of fertility and life. And they thought perhaps because of it shared a color, or it was similar in color to the blue lotus, which was interesting. Then also, it was thought to help with reincarnation from 1552 BC until the Greek-Roman period. There's a link between cornflowers and Osiris that's found after his murder, and he became the sovereign of the underworld, and he was resurrected each year in the growing of corn, therefore creating a link between him and cornflower and resurrection. So that's amazing. And then also it was the plant used to heal Achilles' wound from the poison arrow of Heracles. And so the poison used was from a hydra, who at that time was imagined to be a giant slug. And in Christianity, slugs were associated with the devil. So therefore, the therefore the cornflower became a symbol of the Blessed Queen, of Mary, of Jesus, of this Trinity, of like all things holy, because it's like this overcoming of the devil, which
I love it's like
the Queen of Heaven, yeah,
a symbol of holiness by presenting the devil, you know, and then in the
overcoming the devil, yeah,
yeah, but you like show the devil, and then you're like you show the slug, you show the devil, you show the cornflower blue. That's the color of that's all over the
Mary,
devil in the Marseille like deck, yeah, and Mary herself,
yeah.
Then you're like, it's like by showing the devil, you show holiness. You know, you show overcoming the devil by showing the devil. You know, like then the slug in the garden. You know, like
yeah. Also, if
like the serpent in the garden.
Yeah.
You know,
it's definitely worth looking up ancient art depicting cornflowers because it's such a beautiful motif and it is realistically done.
Weren't you saying it was like big in
charming.
Egypt? It was big in jewelry at that when. There was like it was in fashion, right?
It was, it was the trending flower of that time.
That's so amazing. Which is this period?
The Armana period,
Armana period, which is 1364 to 1347 BC.
Wow.
The flowers depicted in all sorts of jewelry. And then, you know, they like the Egyptians loved that like different kinds of blue and like in the scarab and in like the sky depicted on like coffin lids, tomb lids, sarcophagus lids, I mean. And yeah, it's just really, really interesting.
Yeah.
And it's
the blue of waters, you know, the fertility. There's just so much like blue is.
It's definitely a vortex.
And I remember Anna said that blue is the first color that our eyes are drawn to, which is why it's often used in emergency lights.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's really interesting that like that music video you showed me. What is that?
It was Jay-Z 444.
Yeah, Jay-Z 444, and he shows like a blue screen. He's talking about his son named Blue, right? His daughter. And then it's made me think of Derek Jarman's movie Blue, where he's losing his eyesight and talking about pigments and painting and color in general. Like, there's obviously a reference to that, but I feel like there's a continuity all the way back to Egypt and what they're talking about blue and just that color you see in twilight, you know?
And blue and purple flowers often tell of nervine help, nervine aids, like calming.
Wow,
often
interesting.
are antispasmodics.
Yes.
That's like skullcap, vervain.
I have a little skullcap growing over there. I cut it down, but it has like little blue flowers coming from it. It's beautiful.
It's interesting that the cornflower turned up Osiris, because also vervain does, as it's a plant of Isis. And I was just thinking about Pliny mentions that crushing vervain into grease as an aphrodisiac. And I was thinking about like Libra season and how we ended the Elizabeth Scott show with like suggestions of like having good sex like during Libra time, and I was like, okay, yeah, well, this kind of like is
that's helpful.
like you know, we can make this like this like use the grease and make this like vervain cornflower like kind of like necromantic sex lube, you know, like
well, anyone with tight shoulders, anyone tight like this, vervain is just going to relax.
Massage time, But then I was thinking about that aphrodisiac quality and how like, you know, the whole like myth of Osiris and Isis is about her trying to find his phallus, you know, and that how it was often called like Eisenkraut or iron herb, and it was about being hard, you know, and just like the hard phallus, you know, like, which also has, as we were talking about with Solomon's seal and increasing semen, like has implications in energy work for preparation and magical operation. You know, getting that like sexual energy going is like a big part, and then doing something different with it other than sex is like a big, or going straight sex magic, but you easily can harness that, you know, like that Kundalini energy for that preparation.
It's also called the herb of the cross because it was supposedly the herb used to treat Jesus' wounds when he was taken off the cross.
Which is so central. I mean, from like it's like the whole Jesus situation is pretty much like identified now as like a homoerotic like
Right.
series of myths, like and then Culpepper mentions preparing it with honey and alternately with hog grease and oil of roses. So you can get your recipe here for your aphrodisiac vervain cornflower kind of sex grease, some hog grease, some rose oil, some honey, some blue flowers,
Relax.
Yeah, relax, He also, it's also one of the, it has a huge, vervain is just like so huge in all magical literature. It just comes up all the time for the Saxons, the Druids, the Celts, the Welsh, the Manx, the Egyptians, the Greeks, the Romans, and in the Hermetic literature, and during the Renaissance, and it was like one of the herbs that would repel plague, banish worms, and was said to drive away venomous beasts, and so by extension malicious spirits. In the Grand Grimoire, it's turned into wreaths to put around the candlesticks, and you pointed out, Suzanne, how it would clean altars in Roman state religion, and it just has such a huge role.
Herbs were just called verbena.
Because
it was so common.
Or alternately, they would just like refer to it as the herb. Like it would be talking about like, then take the herb and do this with it, and from an earlier reference that they're talking about vervain. And it has like really interesting relationships through its exaltations and its rulerships and its dignity in face and the decans. As in the Hermetic literature, it rules Libra 2 and Pisces 1 and Taurus generally by Agrippa. But in Pisces, the first face of Pisces, it pairs with blue and green beryl. And in the second face of Libra, it pairs with sardonyx, a form of onyx that has red bands rather than black. And so I thought...
Sardonyx?
Yeah, sardonyx.
Can I see it, how it's spelled?
Yeah.
That's insane.
It's just a form of onyx that has red in it.
It's a good band name.
Sardonyx, yeah. But I thought, yeah, totally. Now you can't take it because that's our band.
No, you can't take it. No, we already have a band name.
Well, we can all be Sardonyx.
That's our bad band name.
That's our bad band name.
Yeah.
More on that later.
Yeah.
But,
stay tuned.
But I thought that was really interesting in that Saturn is exalted in Libra, and that Saturn and Libra are going to be square throughout the month, square by sign, but also like they're going to have an exact square. And so tapping into that Saturn exaltation and that Venus rulership might be really important. And also tapping in that Venus doesn't mind Capricorn because she can understand like the cold and wet, the female sect, the night sect, kind of like earth. She's into the stones and the roots and the plants, that aspect of Saturn, of Capricorn, that people forget about, that nature aspect. And so I thought the sardonyx would be a good, they're in the Hermetic literature, they put sardonyx with vervain in the second decan of Libra, and that might be a good thing for people to try out, is to like mix some, like get that like that part of Saturn that likes to be in Libra and just is all about being fair, because he can measure the scales like no other. That's why he likes it there, because someone else might be like, oh no, that, like make excuses like, no, you didn't make it, but that's all right, go anyway. Where Saturn's like, no, it's just, we just have to be fair. Like, everyone gets what they deserve. You know.
Vervain also blends with a sex magic idea because the extremely erect stem tells it helps with sexual impotence.
Yeah,
as well.
Yeah, it just appeared to me this year, and I saw it in your garden. I saw it on a walk, and then I saw it in your garden and asked you what it was, and then you told me. And so it's so cool when a plant presents itself to you that way, when something really sticks out.
Yeah, and vervain also, like, as a collyrium, as an eye wash, distilled water of vervain. So I guess you're doing some spagyrics here. You're doing some sort of distilling. There's some sort of still involved. And Culpeper says it wonderfully strengthens the optic nerve. So I take that wonderful word as, like, meaning, like, almost like a
Wonder.
supernal or supernatural, like, it's like, it doesn't just, like, wash your eyes nice. It's like something wonderful happens.
Yeah. The
You
peripheral
will see.
starts to get stronger.
So you can wash your eyes with it, but you can also, for scrying, it might be a good gaze wash for your scrying implements, to wash them in vervain. He also mentions peeling the root and tying it around your neck with a white ribbon and hanging it over your stomach. So
I think blacksmiths used to wash their iron in vervain too for extra strengthening for their iron.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah, totally. That iron herb.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's also a quench.
So
Yeah.
there's blue vervain, and then there's vervain. Do we have both here?
Yeah, blue vervain is the native to North
Yeah.
America, Verbena astada, and then there's a vervain, Verbena officinalis. Whenever officinalis is the species, it means it was part of the official records of the monks and nuns, because they were like the infirmaries of the Middle Ages. So it was on their official record. So it's been obviously used even way before that period of time, but that's European variety. And I think it's vervain that teak, I think, is also in the family of vervain.
Oh, really?
wow.
Oh,
The
wow.
vervain family has quite a lot of members, like 200 members in North and South America.
Amazing.
Yeah, even like
That hardwood, that's one
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
hardest woods.
Yeah. So
right, hard.
So
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, and it's really common in the interior of sailboats and things like that. It's
Exactly.
very
fine outdoor
Piscean.
furniture.
Yeah, fine outdoor furniture.
Yeah, Venus would really like that.
Yeah, fantastic. So cornflower and vervain for right now. Get into it. So then August 8th, Mercury retrograde conjuncts the Sun in Leo. This is like happens several times a year, every time Mercury's in retrograde, but they're really important. I don't think they're, like Mercury retrograde gets a lot of press now, people who don't really know what's going on with astrology, but like Mercury retrograde's a big deal now, like
That's because iPhones are a big deal and computers
Right.
are a big
Yeah,
deal.
totally.
And
Timing.
this
Yeah.
communication has sped up to such a point that it really is more clearly seen. I mean, you could be like, "Where's that letter? It really has taken some time, but it happened, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Before, because Mercury is always going into retrograde, but now with your phone, you're like,
we're Mercurying
Yeah.
out so hard.
yeah, exactly.
But I think but people, they're just live in horror of it.
Right.
Yeah,
but
it's definitely
it's Mercury's retrograde. You can find lost items. You can speak to the dead. You can remember
Right.
things that you forgot about. You can remember things from the past. You
Yeah,
can
it's a really beautiful time.
So there's a lot to do, and that's really exemplified by the inferior conjunctions, when that's literally the point where Mercury becomes the messenger. If it's the inferior conjunction, he's handing stuff up from the underworld, and if it's the superior conjunction, he's handing messages down from the celestial world, and so they're really brief, they're like they're just kind of like a moment, because as Mercury and the Sun get 20 minutes away from each other, it starts being more about being combust rather than being cazimi. So it's the cazimi you really want. It's like less than half of a minute of and we're talking astrological minutes as decimal points of an astrological degree, not like a literal minute, but like a Mercury minute. That's what we're talking about. But and so they're really good to know that they're coming beforehand, and set aside a time for reflection or meditation. It's like there's nothing better to be doing than just stopping everything and just listening for a minute and seeing what download Mercury presents to you. So for that, you
Sage.
you suggested clary sage.
Yeah. Ruled by the moon and Mercury, depending on the person you're reading. But often has been used for visioning. Even making a clary sage infused oil would be great for anointing oneself. Or sitting with it. The clary sage smell is just intoxicating. Relaxes the nervous system and enhances one's creativity, so you're able to listen. You're able to. It's almost like taking you outside of the moment. So yeah, I recommend this herb for that. I grow this in my garden, and it's one of my favorite. When it starts blooming, I just get ecstatic. It's just a gorgeous, exuberant bloom.
It's interesting that like so many books, when you get to sage, they say this herb needs no comment. You know, like because it's such an obvious natural health and magical resonance, you know, and that in itself is an echo of its clarity and clarifying action, you know, that like when you get to it in the book, they're like, we don't even need to say anything about this. It's absolutely clear.
Right.
You know? So like,
and sclera comes from clarity, salvia sclerera.
Yeah.
That means clarity.
Yeah, so it's just interesting.
Wise clarity.
Wise clarity. Yeah, it's just like even in the book, they're like, you know what this does. Is moving on. You know.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, and then Culpeper gives it to Jupiter as well, like which is like I think in that sense of like coherence, knowing what all the parts are and that wisdom, you know. He also says it helps to expel the dead child and causes the hair to become black. Which is like...
It's a dark, like, especially garden sage is a hair darkener for sure.
Yeah, wow. Yeah, this is just him talking about sage in general. Yeah. But yeah, I love this stuff he says sometimes. He's like such a hoot, you know. He's definitely someone to necromance, like...
Yeah. He was such a wild being too. He was just like had his own like pharmacies, and he just had his own agenda. Really great. He just kind of left the physician world and was like, got my own thing going on.
Yeah, and he really, I talk about it in my notes later, but he really rails against heathenism sometimes. But is like I already mentioned, is talking about like tying a peeled root around. Like holding it on a white ribbon, holding it against your stomach, and then he's just like this horrible, foolish heathens, you know, like in all these things they believed. Yeah. Because this is all clearly like, you know, like of God, you know.
Well, and I was reading on that Fish Eaters website today, and it was an argument for. Astrology, basically, like believing as Catholics, like in astrology.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so I think that it wasn't as separated then.
No, you wouldn't have been an herbalist without knowing astrology.
Yeah.
Wouldn't have been
right. But bringing in that
physician.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it was just and that was like obviously a huge debate regionally and throughout time, like whether or not it fits or not, and like whether or not. And I think those, like, when you get to those, like, this person's obviously doing natural magic, and then here's a big rant against heathenism. It's obviously to save their own ass, you know, that they're just like, oh, we need to put one of these disclaimers in every once in a while.
Absolutely,
you know?
Like, just so we don't get murdered.
I mean, even, like, Agrippa really turned against magic later in life and wrote all, you know, but it's just, you know, his books are so damning.
Yeah, when the sun comes up and you're like, oh my God, I'm still up. You know?
Yeah, you hear those insomnia birds.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, just, you know, just...
Give me a kombucha.
Yeah, give me a clary sage kombucha, quick. Burn some rue. So, So then, of course, Venus in Libra squares Saturn in Capricorn on Thursday, August 9th at 9:45 p.m. And, this is like, it's never nice when when Venus and Saturn square, when Venus and Saturn tango. But, like we were saying, it's Libra's in rulership, Saturn's in rulership.
Yeah.
Saturn is exalted in Libra, and Venus doesn't mind Capricorn. So there's going to be clashes there, but I feel like it's up to us to navigate them, to try to be like it's like kind of like where you're put in jail, but it's in like this old tower, and you're like, I cannot believe I'm in this dungeon. You're like, but it's made out of such beautiful stones.
Look at that view.
Yeah, look at that view. Could that be like a...
The mist is enlightening me.
So just look through the
water. This is really good water.
Yeah, this is nice water. Yeah.
It's a minerality that I don't have at home.
Yeah, I can make really good underwear wine with this water. So, so for that, you were talking about lemon balm, Melissa officinalis, and Venusian rose geranium, Pelargonium graveolens, which I didn't really look into rose geranium, but
yeah, I was actually very curious about rose geranium. If you have,
well, the way I use rose geranium is basically for I like to spritz myself with rose geranium for when I need that kind of uplift, for that, like when things are too rigid and I need to kind of skate across the surface and feel the mist or like taste the mineral in the water. They both feel like that kind of, you're able to appeal to the senses. You're able to access your senses, your sensuality about whatever situation's going on.
Yeah, I love that you wrote to keep one's appeal and enchantment in the face of possible adversaries.
yeah.
I was like, I really think I need this rose geranium.
It's kind of like you're dancing around, like they're putting like structure on things. You're like, yeah, great, that looks wonderful.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly.
you're kind of enhancing it with some
Clean
flowers.
lines. Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
Saturn always wants you to like put on the hard hat and be co-architect with him, to be responsible with him.
Yeah.
But with this square, the version of responsible that you can do, even though he's going to groan about it, is you can be like the fabulous interior decorator of the prison cell that he's like setting up. You're like, oh great, this prison looks fabulous. You know what it needs?
Absolutely.
He'll just let you do it because that's his exaltation ruler is Venus
Nice
and
ironwork.
Libra.
Yeah. This black and golden drape will look gorgeous here. Your color, Saturn.
It's like that movie of that movie that like the most recent, most contemporary one about like the Marquis de Sade, and you see his prison cell and it's all like done up, like he's just like writing away in there in his own blood. But then lemon balm is interesting, and you mentioned it as Venusian, and that I see that frequently because it is a type of mint, but I also often see it as Jupiterian as well, and it's given to Jupiter and to Cancer, which points out his exaltation in Cancer, and I thought that was really cool as another attribute of it, is it because that hits on that Capricorn Cancer axis, so you can get some leverage because like the moon starves in Capricorn but is like fed in Cancer, and Jupiter loves Cancer because it can bring its like abundance like home, it can bring the abundance right to like where it needs it, and so it kind of can work. Like the more I get on in astrology, I'm starting to see it as these polarity axes, rather than just these single zodiac signs, that if it does something for Cancer, it does something for Capricorn.
It comes back to that spectrum. Like,
Totally.
Like it's not one way, it's like a whole.
Yeah.
Your tarot card is a whole spectrum, like everything.
Totally. Yeah, exactly. And these are really like those zodiac axes are really, and that's a big one because it's it's the solstice axis, you know. So there's a lot of info there. It's a real rod, you know. It's not like there's necessarily like less in Gemini Sagittarius, but really like that's a heavy one, like Cancer Capricorn, and then it's Cancer Capricorn with Saturn in Capricorn, and then Venus in Libra. It's the equinox, like Libra Aries equinox. So we're really talking about the big major cross, like the four kings, like the big thing, right? You know, and so it's really nice to bring lemon balm there. And I was thinking about how it's Melissa, and that's Greek for honeybee, and so that's really great. And it's roll and absinthe. Melissa is like typically an absinthe, you know. So there's an absinthe is that like green color. It has this kind of like set, like it's almost like the romantic Saturn, you know. Like, because it's like bitter and it's kind of harsh, you know, like. Yeah, and so Raffio says that lemon balm causes the mind and the heart to become merry and drive away negative thoughts arising from melancholy or black choler. So it works on that Cancer Capricorn axis via Jupiter's exaltation, and I don't know how to say this person's name, Avicen or Avicen.
Maybe Avicen.
Avicen says he also says it expels melancholic spirits from the heart and from the arteries. So you can think of them like actually like, you know, that like hard, like rocks like shooting out of like your heart itself, you know, like,
or like an exterior, like kind of just like of your heart, like this like rough exterior kind of like cracking away.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
allowing it to be open and therefore more joyful.
Yeah, to beat and be, you know, it's like that, we talked about it before, that Cancer heart, right? Like that heart as like the like sac of the mind, you know, like
it's also a cooling sour mint. A lot of mints are like peppermint is hot and cool, but this is more cooling and sour, and so it's nutritive as well as cools like a hot head, a hot blood. You know, just like
it's been
brings it back to steady or just
yeah. So it works on black bile and yellow bile.
Yeah, I've definitely been using it a lot, just culinarily this summer, because I have a little bit growing over there, and it's been wonderful. And just putting it in water or my tea when I go, you know, my green tea when I go, and it's just helpful. It's just, I love it. I love the flavor. I love everything about it. What is the bee balm that has the red flowers? Monarda. Okay, so that's just a whole another.
Yeah, I mean that's an uplift of spirit, but also amazing for digestive woes and. Yeah, that's an amazing plant.
I'm really attracted to those flowers because that red is...
That exuberance is...
Yeah. You just don't see that much naturally, though we were telling you about seeing those flowers at the pond that we go to, and they have that red. But to see those flowers just they're so stunning. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny that they're both balms, and Culpepper just calls lemon balm balm.
Right.
You know, like that's what he's talking about, but it's before the lemon even got put in there, and he doesn't even like mention anything about it being lemony. But I guess they just like he might not have ever encountered that citrus before.
I was wondering,
you know? Like there was just it was balm and not lemon like, balm, and he doesn't
traveling with the lemons and like them getting there like at the I don't know.
So and then Dioscorides says that the leaves of lemon balm steeped in wine prevent scorpion bites and attacks from mad dogs, which I thought was like, you know, if we're talking about this Saturn-Venus square, what we're talking about Saturn delivering is just a fucking bummer for you to deal with, you know? And lemon balm even preventing that. Because what is a scorpion bite or a mad dog bite but just something that's really going to ruin your day? Like like in a major way, just like a disaster, like
Yeah.
like everything was fine at the picnic until I got stung by a scorpion and bit by a rabid dog.
I was having a great
I was
time.
having a great time before that.
Yeah.
So yeah, just make sure you got plenty of lemon balm in your jar.
Arsenal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it grows all over the Northwest, like everywhere. In the Northwest, it used to more often rain completely during the whole winter. And so it was a way to it's also for seasonal depression, disorder, or whatever it's called.
Oh yeah, sad.
SAD, yeah.
Yeah,
SAD.
that's what it's called.
No, I
It's
know.
called SAD.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sad American diet, SAD.
Yeah, totally.
I was Seja says that he's sad isn't real because he was saying that it's natural, and so to give it too much, to not accept it as something that's natural, maybe. And I'm sure I'm not exactly quoting him correctly, but I was just it was in the botanical constellations class, and he was talking about just that it's to expect yourself to be joyful all the time, or exuberant all the time isn't realistic.
Yeah.
And so there's something to be said for having these down times,
Yeah, I
maybe not
agree.
obviously not feeling bad about yourself or your abilities, whatever
Yeah,
it may be, but
Like if the four humors have to be put in balance,
Right.
you don't want to anytime black bile presents itself, you don't want to just take the melancholy gun and just blow it away.
Right. Exactly.
it needs to be there.
So, lemon balm brings that balance back because our culture just is was that fun? Did you have a
yeah,
Yeah,
happy?
Right.
yeah,
And no, not all the time, and I don't want that all the time.
Yeah.
But
And
being able to find get out of bed, and
yes,
some days maybe just staying in bed all day is
absolutely.
winter time.
Yeah, it's wonderful when you
but the romance of stoicism, just we've all read Independent People, they're
it doesn't end well.
maybe it's a bad example.
You know what I'm doing. I mean, The Archer is a great example of that. Yeah.
So then we're talking about Friday, August 10th, Mercury retrograde in Leo squaring Jupiter in Scorpio. And so I didn't take a lot of notes on this, but I thought your suggestions were great.
Ooh, me too. These are my favorite. Or, I mean, just
yeah,
have
I just thought
real affinity for these herbs.
I just thought you'd nailed these, and we didn't need to go crazy over picking that part apart, but that they were giving a really good brain massage and readying us for communications and bringing in information and coherence and understanding. Because Jupiter and Mercury squaring, it's Mercury's neutral and Jupiter's the benefic. It's definitely going to be mentally stimulating, but it's not going to and it might cause a bunch of mental activity. We might get really excited to do, but it doesn't throw sparks in there. It doesn't throw a challenge in there. It just, you're just a day where you just it might be a day where you just do a bunch of really good reading that just blows your mind,
That's such a fun day.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about
did you mention the herbs?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go over the
Oat straw, fennel, and lavender. Go.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding.
So prior to the solar eclipse, just preparing exactly. Appeasing Rahu with some sandalwood might be a good idea. Also, juniper complement is ruled by Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter. So you're really accessing all of the partial solar eclipse and the square, and kind of readying yourself. Jupiter accesses ancestors, the other world, where Jupiter's in Scorpio right now, and Mercury bringing messages from that zone.
Yeah, that's perfect.
And then, oat straw, fennel, lavender, all being ruled by Mercury and Jupiter. Lavender also brings in the sun just is a really relaxing tea, just helping your mind to be open. Fennel is really, I feel like, really mental awareness. And lavender just like opens to other realms as well. So yeah, just ways to ready yourself for
Also,
that zone.
yeah, and I feel like fennel is really good for any kind of like water retention, which is prone to happen in these last like the hottest time of summer.
Oh yeah.
So fennel and lavender like always make a delicious tea, but
Yeah.
of course like add oats and I'm in. It's
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
it's so good.
You're right. It
Amazing.
does make you like kind of lean, like Mercury. You know.
I was wondering where you get your planetary associations to herbs. Like, what is the main, or like what?
I access a lot of places. Culpeper, Ellen Everett Hopman has a few different books, and she really is into planetary astrology. Who else? I recently picked up a copy of the Master Book of Herbalism by Paul Bayerel from 1984, and he talks a lot about planetary astrology. So I've been interested in what he has to say. He often, I see, draws upon Culpeper.
Yeah, Culpeper kind of. I definitely look to Culpeper a lot, but not all the herbs are in there.
You're right, exactly.
And so
But that's why
I find like myself falling short if it's not in the Culpeper book, because you can just like look on the internet, but you don't know who's writing what, and I don't know any like. There's not a website that I trust completely, and everybody says something different.
Yeah,
So
and that's also...
Well, you just use Culpeper's logic.
yes,
And then, so yeah, we should.
Yeah, we should.
We mentioned that before, but yeah, we should definitely come back sometime soon and do a show on like doing planetary correspondence from scratch. Like doing it yourself. So like,
because Culpeper's not going to have our Northwest natives.
Yeah,
exactly.
totally.
North American and South American.
and you'll definitely see a little bit of every planet in every plant, but there's some guidelines that you're like, well, what's on top? Like what's it most saying?
Yeah.
And then that starts really opening it up. You're like, oh well, it's definitely Mars, but it's kind of Scorpio Mars, and
Right.
then, and then you really start to see it, and then you can see those all the other minor dignities. It filters just like anything, like someone's natal chart,
Yeah,
like
Nettles is really Mars, but it's really watery
Yeah.
too. So it's almost like more of a Scorpio.
yeah, you'll get like the master of the nativity, but you'll also get like the joint master and like the Lord, So I was thinking with lavender, fennel, oat straw, and cinquefoil, and sandalwood and juniper, those all looked like I really imagined like steeping them and just like really deeply breathing in the steam,
That'd be
like
amazing.
if we're talking about the brain and Jupiter and Mercury, like getting because it seemed a lot about the aromas and getting them really up into your sinuses and just like massaging your brain with these hot aromas, like loosening up.
I like that.
It's hot, it's summer, but like loosening up like soaking like your sinuses in that hot steam and like moistening them and getting like the plant allies as much up into your like gray matter as you can.
Yeah.
Okay, so then we have the eclipse itself on Saturday, August 11th, and this is a partial solar eclipse on the North Node in Leo. And so that last year we had our dramatic North Node Leo Rahu eclipse, and then this year the dramatic eclipse was the July 27th South Node K2 eclipse conjunct retrograde Mars. So that's kind of ruling the boxing match, the eclipse boxing match this year, but we still like this North Node Leo eclipse still brings a lot of like Rahu always inflates the head, inflates the ego, like makes you like overly passionate and hungry, and but this is Leo. It does do like fun things for you too. It's gonna like it can like just really vitalize and kind of like make you want to stand up and be yourself and walk into the spotlight, So you were talking calendula, angelica, and St. John's wort.
Yeah, they're both extreme midsummer herbs, extreme Sun and Leo herbs. They all really make a statement wherever they are in the garden or in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
And they all are really confident herbs, confidence building, like confidence remembering. They're really uplifting of the spirit. Angelica, I feel like, helps make really wise decisions because you're really working from your confidence space, from your like intuitive knowing. So I think it will help maybe not have such an inflated ego with Rahu, but also that kind of joyfulness of Leo coming through.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the angelica I don't know much about.
Yeah, me neither.
Angelica, I grew for probably about 5 or 6 years before I really started using angelica. I used to grow kind of this forest of angelica. It's this amazing celery carrot family plant, Apiaceae family, so it has those big, almost like parsley-like leaves, but on a really grand scale.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a real statement grabber in the garden. It's like grows to like 6 feet tall with these beautiful umbels that attracts so many different pollinators, and the smell is like really intoxicating. But it's a really great hormone balancer, really good balancer, really good blood nourisher. It really, if someone actually bleeds really heavily, like it might not be their ally because it brings on a lot of blood. It just kind of brings things out. Real confidence giver.
Yeah, that's really great for Leo. So it's angelica, archangelica,
Yeah,
right?
there's a lot of different varieties. That's
there
more
is.
of a
Okay.
European variety. There's a lot. That's also Dong Huai in traditional Chinese medicine.
Oh, okay.
There's quite a few different, I think maybe hundreds of species of angelica, actually.
And so Culpeper has listed an angelica and an archangel.
Mm-hmm.
Are these different kinds of angelica, or is this archangel something else?
Archangel angelica is one variety of angelica.
Okay. Because, yeah, that's like he has like one whole entry that's angelica and one whole entry that's archangel. And that's like in the angelica entry is that's where you get that rant against heathenism, or one of them.
Oh, interesting.
Is like he just goes nuts. Like I was like almost gonna read it, but it's long. But yeah, he goes completely bonkers with that, and like it was really interesting that the etymology of archangel in general comes from Greek, and so it's likely from the syncretic period, and it harkens back to like a belief that the archangel Michael told of the uses of angelica to people, and that was really interesting because that makes it solar but also mercurial, and we have Mercury in Leo at the same time and doing its retrograde there, and it's sort of mercurial because if you look at like the alternate name of Michael, like Metatron, the etymology of that is from Hebrew, but likely originally before that from Latin, like as like metator, one who meets out or marks off a place, a divider and a fixer of boundaries, and a measurer. And so you find Metatron and Michael in the PGMs and in the grimoires, but it likely comes from the rabbinic literature and like Jewish magic. But then you look ahead actually to Michaelmas, like and like Michael, like the archangel takes the role of previous heathen harvest gods, and then you look at like his at Culpeper going nuts over Angelica in his heathen rant, and you're like, well, there's probably actually a lot there. People like really, this was, we're always like, the neo-pagans are like, oh, they the church came and then they just took all the gods and they just put angels and saints in their place, and that's like maybe only the case like a percentage of the time, but this like Angelica, like Archangel, like Michael, like Harvest situation is probably one of those situations, and that's why you see it's like a sensitive spot for culpepper, it's a definite heathen herb,
And the hollow stems of Angelica really can tell of that it promotes circulation or conversation.
Oh, wow.
So kind of that messenger.
Oh, interesting.
Mode.
I just found what Seja was talking about, which about seasonal affective disorder, but it relates actually to St. John, his write-up of St. John in the Leo part of the botanical constellations. And so he writes that St. John's wort is not an antidepressant, rather it is a nerve tropho-restorative and a gentle, uplifting agent for the spirit, a Shen tonic in Chinese medicine. This makes it most useful for treating mild melancholy and perhaps a short bout of seasonal affective disorder, which I would like to say is not a disorder, but the body and mind's natural response to lack of sunlight. It's normal. This plant will not cure chronic or deep depression. That being said, it does help lift the spirit, for sure. And it is here we see the solar signature, lifting the clouds of the mind and suppression of the spirit.
Wow.
So beautiful.
Yeah, some people take St. John's wort from October through May just for that reason.
Yeah.
Or, and I would always consider it only for, like you said, like a mild kind of sadness. Anyone's in deep, deep depression, like St. John's wort isn't really going to touch that.
What were you just telling me that was really... Oh.
Black cohosh, maybe?
No, I'll remember.
Okay.
But there was something that they said is really good for deep, deep sadness. I'll remember.
Oh, maybe ghost pipe?
Yes, ghost pipe. Yes, exactly. Yeah, because you said you have a ton of the tincture.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because it also forms like a hollow tube,
And it's also like useful for contacting the dead, which is interesting because a lot of like deep sadness will come from the loss of somebody.
Right.
So, should we go inside? We're getting eaten by
Maybe we
mosquitoes.
should.
Okay.
Let's pause it.
Yeah, we'll pause it and we'll continue this in 1 minute.